Since childhood, I've been able to see the exact amount of money in someone's bank account floating above their head. At the orphanage, I use this gift to pick adoptive parents who look shabby, but actually have $1 billion sitting in the bank. Unfortunately, I only get to enjoy the good life for a short time before the family's real daughter is brought home. She's furious that I've taken her place and makes it her mission to make my life miserable in order to stay in school. I swallow every insult and endure her bullying. After finally graduating, I'm ready to walk away from this family forever. But the real daughter stops me. She's fuming as she says, "I thought my online boyfriend was a rich guy with a Ferrari, but it turns out he's just a broke loser who rides a rental bike. If he latches on to me, it'll be a stain on my reputation for life. You go meet him for me. Tell him you're the one he's been dating online." I look in the direction she's pointing and see the man she's talking about. A broke nobody, but the bank balance hovering over his head has 10 digits. I swallow hard, my heart racing as I grab the real daughter's arm in excitement. "Quick, tell me everything about your online relationship. I'll go meet him right now." Yvonne Reed let out a mocking laugh. "Seriously, Tessa, have you never seen a man before drooling over a broke loser?" She tossed her phone at me. "Since you're that desperate, I'll give him to you. Leave with him and don't ever come back." I memorized every detail and walked up to him. "Hi, I'm Cindy. My real name is Tessa Reed." I smiled and held out my hand. His eyes lit up. "You're even prettier than I imagined. My real name is Calvin Fulton." Yvonne had only sent him blurry photos. Our figures were similar enough that he didn't suspect anything. When I shook his hand, I counted the numbers above his head, 10 digits, steadily increasing. If I could latch onto him, I wouldn't just escape my family. I wouldn't need to worry about anything anymore. Calvin gave me a self-conscious look. "I'm dressed shabbily and I came on a rented bike. Are you embarrassed by me?" He wore worn-out flip-flops and cheap threadbare clothes. Yvonne had played the part of a poor girl online. I went along with it. "All my clothes are hand-me-downs. Looks like we're both frugal." When he saw my sallow skin and thin frame, his suspicion eased. But his test wasn't over. "Let me buy you a meal," he said. He rented a bike for me, making sure I saw his old phone. I took out my own cracked phone and bought him a soda. After biking half an hour, he led me to a buffet place selling boxed meals for $15. When I froze, Calvin rubbed his hands nervously. "A whole day of delivering takeout only gets me $80. Are you going to look down on me?" My stomach growled. Of course not. I was adopted and my adoptive parents stopped supporting me once I got into college. I worked part-time for tuition. I usually bought cheap bread and free soup. For me, this is already luxurious. I hurried inside, piling food onto my tray. "Sweet and sour pork? Love that. Mashed potatoes? Love that. Bread rolls? Love that." Calvin followed me. When he saw how eagerly I ate, tenderness flickered in his eyes. "So you really do love this stuff?" I was too busy eating to hear him. After a few bites, he put his fork down. Everything he didn't finish ended up in my stomach. When I finished, I patted my full belly. "Thanks. This was the most satisfying meal I've had all year." "Don't be so easy to please. Once I start making real money, I'll take you somewhere better." When he offered to walk me home, I waved him off. "I'm never going back there. I'll stay in a cheap hostel while I look for a job." Calvin had always been curious about Yvonne's life in their chats. She always dodged the question. So now I spoke freely. I was adopted. A few days after they brought me home, their biological daughter was sent back. From then on, she bullied me constantly. My adoptive parents knew. They just didn't care. But they gave me food, shelter, and schooling. I'm still grateful. Calvin's hands balled into fists. "So you just put up with it?" I nodded and pulled up my sleeve, showing him scars, burns, scratches, a dog bite. "It's fine. I've graduated. Now, once I save enough, I'll pay them back and cut ties." "Tessa, when we started talking, I honestly thought you were just pretending to be pitiful to scam me." Now he no longer suspected me. He looked into my eyes. "If you could make one wish right now, what would it be?" I glanced at his balance. In the time we'd eaten, his assets had gone up another 5 million. Yet he was still pretending to be broke. Asking for money was unrealistic. "I hope I can find a job soon, with room and board. If possible." Calvin raised his brows mysteriously. "Maybe the universe will hear you." After thanking him for lunch, I bought him ice cream. He helped me find a cheap hostel. That evening, he treated me to dinner. Again, we went our separate ways. To my surprise, I got a call from a listed company's HR. "We saw your resume. You're a great fit. Would you like to come in for an interview?" I knew this came from him. The interview went smoothly. They told me to come back for onboarding. I called Calvin excitedly. "Your mouth is magic." I landed a job with a dorm And meal allowance. I have to treat you to a meal. He agreed, still in that same cheap outfit. I haven't bought decent clothes in ages. Hope you don't mind. His balance had gone up another 80 million since yesterday. I didn't call him out. Once I get my paycheck, I'm buying you new clothes. You can barely afford to feed yourself, and you want to buy me clothes? You were good to me, so I should be good to you. He looked touched, and it wasn't fake. From then on, I threw myself into my new job. I saw Calvin every day. We grew closer. We still ate at cheap street stalls, but he gradually relaxed. On payday, I bought him new clothes. He put them on and said, seriously, Tessa, this is only the start of your good luck. He said he'd be busy for a few days. When he finished, he'd give me a huge surprise. I didn't know what he meant. Part of me preferred him pretending to be poor. At least then, we were on equal footing. If he was really some untouchable rich heir, I didn't know how I'd face him. Over the next few days, I couldn't reach Calvin. He'd text occasionally, be patient, wait for me. But before I saw him again, the person I least wanted to see showed up. I had no idea how Yvonne found my address. So, are you with my online boyfriend? Tell him to come here. She shoved her phone in my face. I checked the financial news. He looks exactly like the Fulton family's heir. The photo showed Calvin at an overseas event. Custom suit, $1 million watch, Rolls-Royce bodyguards. So he really was the heir to the most powerful family in our city. I nearly burst out laughing. This rich heir had dressed shabbily and eaten cheap street food just to test his online girlfriend. Afraid Yvonne would expose me, I tried to calm her down. You're overthinking it. The first time he treated me was a $15 box meal. He only has one set of clothes. His slippers are falling apart. How could he be the Fulton heir? I showed her photos of us at street stalls. She scrolled for a while, then looked at my worn-out clothes. Only then did she reluctantly believe me. Makes sense. If he were rich, he'd spend money on you. And someone that high class wouldn't go for a broke nobody like you. Before leaving, she sneered, you were born pathetic, Tessa. Trash. Like you belongs with losers. Don't you dare say you're from the Reed family. I swallowed my resentment. A tiny hope rose in my chest. What if one day, Calvin stood by my side and made her eat her words? I only indulged that fantasy for a few seconds. Calvin had already given me a good job. That was hitting the jackpot. How could I hope for more? I kept my head down and got through another 3 peaceful days. That day after work, I just stepped out of the company building when a Rolls-Royce suddenly pulled up right in front of me. The rear window slowly rolled down. Calvin's face, both familiar and strangely distant at the same time, appeared before my eyes. Tessa, get in. There's something I need to talk to you about, he said. All the other employees stopped in their tracks, staring and whispering. My mind short-circuited. I couldn't believe Calvin had actually revealed his identity in front of everyone. Seeing me frozen, Calvin chuckled and opened the door, stepping out of the car. What are you spacing out for? We've only been apart for a few days and you've already forgotten me? As he walked toward me with that gentle look in his eyes, my heart pounded violently. Maybe miracles really did happen. Just as I hesitated, a shrill voice suddenly rang out from behind me. Mr. Fulton, Tessa has tricked you. She's not the real Cindy, who's been chatting with you online. She's an imposter. My breath hitched and I stiffly turned around. Yvonne came charging over. I'm Yvonne Reed. I'm Cindy, the one who was really in an online relationship with you. When I saw Calvin's expression darken, I felt like I'd been plunged into an ice-cold abyss. All the blood drained from my face. I was done. I wanted so badly to explain, but fear made my throat close up. Contemptuous, mocking stares closed in on me from every direction. Look, this is my account. These are our chat logs. And these are the photos I sent you. I have tons of proof that Tessa has been lying to you. You can't let this scammer off the hook, Yvonne cried. Calvin didn't even glance at the phone. She was waving in front of him. Instead, he looked only at me. Tessa. His voice was calm. Did you deceive me for money? The question struck harder than any slap. I clenched my trembling hands. Yes and no. Yvonne burst into laughter. See. She admitted it. Tears burned behind my eyes. The person you chatted with online wasn't me, I said honestly. She asked me to come here pretending to be her, because she thought you were poor. I accepted because my gaze drifted upward to the numbers floating above Calvin's head. They had already climbed past 10 billion. Because I knew you weren't. A wave of shocked murmurs spread through the crowd. Yvonne looked at me as though I'd gone insane. What nonsense are you talking about? I took a deep breath. I've never lied about why I stayed after that first meeting. I was hungry. I needed work. I wanted a chance to leave the Reed family. You helped me. I was grateful. I also wanted to stay close to you because I knew you were rich. Every word was painfully honest. I can't deny that. Yvonne smirked victoriously. You hear that? She admits she's a gold digger. Calvin remained expressionless. So you stayed because of my money? At first. My voice grew softer. But after spending time with you. I smiled bitterly. I forgot about the money. Silence. I liked the man who rode a rental bike. The man who worried I'd look down on him. The man who split the last meatball on his plate, because he thought I hadn't eaten enough. The man who secretly found me a job without asking for anything in return. I never once wished you'd stop pretending to be poor. If anything, I laughed weakly. I hoped you'd stay that way forever. Her smile disappeared. Because then I wouldn't have to wonder whether someone like me deserved to stand beside someone like you. Even the employees watching nearby fell silent. Yvonne rolled her eyes dramatically. Mr. Fulton, don't listen to this performance. She's acting. You've only known her a few weeks. I've been talking to you online for over a year. You should know who really cared about you. Calvin finally turned toward her. His expression was colder than winter. Talking to me? Yes. You complained every day about being poor. Yes. You said you'd never abandon me even if I stayed a delivery driver forever. Exactly. Calvin slowly nodded. I remember. Hope lit up Yvonne's face. Then he asked quietly, so why did you send someone else to meet me? Her smile froze. You believed I was poor. You thought dating me would damage your reputation. I can explain. You called me a stain. His voice wasn't loud, yet every word landed like a hammer. You gave me away. You treated me like unwanted trash. And now that you've discovered my identity. He looked at her with complete indifference. You suddenly remembered you were my girlfriend? Yvonne's face turned deathly pale. No, that's not what happened. It isn't. Calvin took out his own phone. I recorded our first meeting. My eyes widened. He had recorded it? He tapped the screen. Yvonne's voice immediately echoed across the quiet plaza. Seriously, Tessa, have you never seen a man before? Drooling over a broke loser. Since you're that desperate, I'll give him to you. Leave with him and don't ever come back. Every sentence. Every sneer. Every cruel laugh. It all played clearly through the speakers. The employees gasped. Someone whispered. So she literally handed him over because she thought he was poor. Another muttered. And now she's trying to steal him back because he's rich. Yvonne stumbled backward, her face burning crimson. No, that's edited. Calvin locked eyes with her. The recording is time-stamped. So are your messages. If necessary, my legal team can authenticate every file. Yvonne's lips trembled. For once, she had nothing to say. Yvonne's face turned ghostly white. Then, without warning, she dropped to the ground. The same girl who had spent years looking down on everyone suddenly burst into tears. Calvin. I was wrong. I was just confused. My parents spoiled me too much. I didn't mean any of it. She crawled forward, reaching for the leg of his tailored trousers. I really liked talking to you online. I just couldn't accept dating someone poor. But if I'd known who you really were. She froze. The realization hit her before she finished the sentence. Calvin looked down at her with icy eyes. So if I were still delivering food today, you would still be ashamed of me. Yvonne's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You don't like me. You like my surname. His words landed with brutal precision. The surrounding employees immediately began whispering. So that's the Reed family's daughter? She dumped him because she thought he was broke. Now she's begging because he's a billionaire? That's embarrassing. Someone even quietly took out a phone. Within minutes, short videos of the confrontation were already spreading through local social media. Inside the Reed mansion, Mrs. Reed was leisurely drinking tea when her phone suddenly exploded with notifications. One after another. Your daughter is trending. The Fulton heir exposed a fake relationship. Reed family's daughter publicly humiliated. Her teacup slipped from her hand and shattered. What? She hurriedly tapped the video. The moment she heard Yvonne scream, I thought he was a broke loser. Mrs. Reed nearly fainted. Turn the car around. Now, back outside the company. Luxury cars began pulling up one after another. First came the Reed family. Then came several black sedans bearing the Fulton family's crest. The atmosphere instantly became suffocating. Employees backed away instinctively. Even security guards stood frozen. The first person to step out of the lead sedan was Mr. Reed. His usually calm face was twisted with panic. Mr. Fulton. He hurried over, practically bowing. I'm terribly sorry. My daughter is immature. I sincerely apologize on behalf of the Reed family. Mrs. Reed quickly followed. Please forgive her. She doesn't represent our family's values. Yvonne stared at her parents in disbelief. Dad, Mom. You've never apologized to anyone in your lives. Mr. Reed turned and slapped her across the face. Smack. The sound echoed through the entire plaza. Yvonne stumbled several steps before crashing onto the pavement. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Dad. Shut up. Mr. Reed was shaking with rage. You've offended the Fulton family. Do you know what you've done? Yvonne burst into tears. So now you care? I've always been your precious daughter. You always told me no one in this city was above the Reed family. Mr. Reed's expression stiffened. Because until this moment, that had been true. The Reeds were wealthy, powerful, untouchable. Until today. Calvin calmly adjusted his cufflinks. The Reed family. I've heard of you. Mr. Reed forced a smile. We've always hoped to cooperate with the Fulton Group. Calvin interrupted him. I've looked through your company. My investment department submitted an acquisition proposal yesterday. Everyone froze. Mr. Reed blinked. Acquisition. Yes. We intended to buy your company. But after today. He smiled politely. We've decided not to buy it. Relief flooded Mr. Reed's face. For exactly 1 second. Instead, we'll compete with it. Silence. Absolute silence. Every executive standing behind Calvin smiled faintly. One of them opened a folder. Chairman. The Reed Group has 6 major bank loans maturing next month. We've already acquired controlling stakes in 2 of their largest suppliers. 3 overseas partners have agreed to terminate cooperation. And, he glanced at the papers. Their largest client signed an exclusive agreement with us this morning. Mr. Reed's legs nearly gave out. And no, that's impossible. Calvin looked at him calmly. It was possible. I simply hadn't decided whether it was necessary. His eyes shifted toward me. Until today. Mrs. Reed suddenly rushed toward me. Tessa. She grabbed both of my hands. For the first time in my life. She smiled at me warmly. My dear. We've treated you like our own daughter all these years. If Yvonne made mistakes. You'll help us, won't you? The words made me feel physically sick. My own daughter. When I had a fever of 104 degrees, she had locked my bedroom door so I wouldn't infect Yvonne. When Yvonne burned my schoolbooks, Mrs. Reed had made me apologize for provoking her. When the family dog bit my arm badly enough to leave scars, Mr. Reed had said only one thing. At least it wasn't Yvonne. Now, I was suddenly their daughter. I slowly pulled my hands free. No. Mrs. Reed's smile cracked. Tessa. You said you wanted to repay us. I do. I reached into my bag. A neatly folded envelope had been waiting there for months. I placed it in Mr. Reed's hands. He opened it. Inside was a bank draft. Every cent they had spent raising me. Food, school fees, books, clothing. Even the interest had been carefully calculated. I've repaid everything. My voice was steady. From today onward. I owe the Reed family nothing. Mr. Reed stared blankly at the bank draft as it trembled in his hands. For the first time since adopting me, he realized he wasn't losing a burden. He was losing the one person who had quietly endured everything without ever asking for anything in return. There would be no way to bring her back. Mr. Reed crumpled the bank draft in his shaking hands. Tessa. For the first time in 18 years, there was regret in his voice. Come home. I smiled faintly. I don't have a home. I turned around and walked toward Calvin. Without a word, he opened the Rolls-Royce's door for me. As I got inside, I glanced back one last time. Yvonne was still kneeling on the pavement. Mrs. Reed was crying. Mr. Reed looked as though he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The car door closed. With that single sound, the Reed family disappeared from my life. The following month, the Fulton Group officially announced its entry into every industry the Reed Group depended on. Construction, real estate, logistics, hotels, finance. Wherever the Reed family invested, the Fulton Group arrived first. Wherever the Reed family bid, the Fulton Group offered something better. Clients left. Partners withdrew. Banks demanded early repayment. News headlines came one after another. Reed Group stock plunges 28% in one day. Major shareholders sell off holdings. Reed Group under investigation for accounting irregularities. Employees resigned in waves. Executives quietly accepted offers from competitors. Suppliers demanded cash up front. Within 6 months, the once proud Reed Group had become a company drowning in debt. Mr. Reed refused to accept reality. He mortgaged the family mansion, then the vacation villa, then the luxury cars, then his personal collection of antiques. Each gamble ended the same way. Failure. Eventually, even the banks stopped answering his calls. One rainy afternoon, he stood outside a bank carrying documents in a soaked briefcase. The security guard politely blocked the entrance. Sir, the manager instructed us not to let you in. Mr. Reed stared at the closed glass doors. Just a year ago, the manager would have run outside to greet him. Now, He wasn't even allowed inside. Mrs. Reed's social circle vanished overnight. The women who once called her dear friend suddenly became impossible to reach. Invitations stopped arriving. Her luxury club membership was revoked after unpaid fees. Even the charity gala she had chaired for years quietly replaced her with another sponsor. One afternoon she walked into a boutique she'd visited for over a decade. The sales assistant smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Reed. We no longer offer purchases on account." Mrs. Reed searched through her purse. Every card was declined. She quietly removed the designer handbag from her shoulder. "I'll come back another day." As she left, she heard two younger women whispering, "Isn't that the Reed lady? They say she sold most of her jewelry." How tragic. She lowered her head and walked away. Yvonne suffered the hardest fall. The video of her mocking a poor delivery driver, before discovering he was the Fulton heir, never disappeared from the internet. Every company she interviewed with recognized her. Every wealthy family avoided her. Every blind date ended after a quick search of her name. People laughed behind her back. The gold digger. The girl who threw away a billionaire. She tried contacting Calvin hundreds of times. Blocked. She created new numbers. Blocked again. She even waited outside Fulton Group headquarters. Security escorted her away before she reached the front door. One afternoon, she saw me leaving the building. I was wearing a tailored business suit. My employee badge had changed. Executive Director. She froze. "Tessa." I stopped politely. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her expensive clothes were gone. "So, you won." There was no arrogance left in her voice. Only exhaustion. I looked at her quietly. This was never a competition. She laughed bitterly. "You've become everything I wanted. And I've become everything I mocked." She lowered her head. "I hated you because I thought you stole my family. But..." She looked up with tear-filled eyes. "They were never worth fighting over." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I simply nodded. "I hope one day you find peace." I walked away. This time, she didn't stop me. Years passed. Under Calvin's guidance, I continued learning business management. He never treated me as someone who needed rescuing. He made me study, work, negotiate, fail, learn. Little by little, I built my own reputation. The employees who had once whispered because I arrived in a Rolls-Royce now respected me because I could solve problems no one else could. Eventually, Calvin transferred one of the group's struggling subsidiaries into my hands. Many directors objected. "She's too inexperienced. She's only here because of Chairman Fulton." Calvin ignored every complaint. 1 year later, the subsidiary posted record-breaking profits. 2 years later, it expanded overseas. 3 years later, business magazines placed my photo on the cover. From orphan to self-made CEO, the woman who turned a failing company into a billion-dollar success. People praised my talent. Only I knew, none of it would have happened if one man hadn't seen me for who I was when I had nothing. One evening, Calvin took me back to the little buffet where we'd first eaten together. The price had gone up. The owner laughed. "Inflation." We both smiled. Instead of ordering the expensive private room upstairs, we carried our trays to the same small table by the window. I still took too many bread rolls. He still pushed the last piece of sweet and sour pork onto my plate. "You still love that." "I always will." He reached across the table and intertwined his fingers with mine. "Tessa, back then, you looked at me with stars in your eyes. Were you looking at me? Or my money?" I laughed. "At first, I was absolutely looking at your money." He groaned dramatically. "I knew it. But..." I squeezed his hand. "Money made me walk toward you. You made me stay." Calvin smiled, then slipped a small velvet box onto the table. Inside was a simple diamond ring. No tests. No disguises. No pretending. "This time, will you marry me as Calvin Fulton?" Tears filled my eyes. I smiled the same smile I'd worn when I'd first reached out my hand to the poor man in worn flip-flops. Yes. This time, I didn't need to look above his head to know how fortunate I was. For the first time in my life, my happiness had nothing to do with the numbers floating over anyone's bank account. It was built on the life I had earned, the love I had found, and the family I